Hi there, traders. Now, just to give you a bit of a daily update, just to keep you in tune with what's going on. Obviously, the equity markets now try and work out. We're coming into the end of week 3, right? The last week of the month coming up gets a little bit loose. A lot of momentum can shift. If anything, the first 2 weeks at least where the top heavy US numbers are. So if you're wondering why equities are bouncing, it's pretty much because there's no more headline really strong US numbers. So it's the last week and a half, 2 weeks, equities get a chance to breathe, right? But it's not over for them. So that's where we are. And that happens a lot when you look across the board too. the currencies and all that sort of stuff, other instruments are all in the same phase. They like to have time off, right? And that's where they sort of switch off. Euro trading sideways. There would be a trend line up here, I guess, on Euro. Sterling sideways. Aussie still sort of just bending down a bit. And I'll show you something in a second. The commodity index is really falling again. So just be aware when you see that, right? Aussie and Kiwi could come off, as is CAD, right? Because oil is a big part of the commodity index. So oil doing the same thing. So Aussie, Kiwi, CAD, you see weakness in those specific currencies. Dollar Swiss, I'll tell you what, well, that's just a bit of a dog's breakfast for me. And dollar yen, well, it's got a mind of its own, doing its own thing. So what you're trying to do is, am I missing anything? At the moment, I don't think so, right? So if I came back over here, just give you a look at the global page, you're like, okay, so dollar index sideways, euro, that sort of makes sense. Gold, well, if anything, it's starting to top out again and sort of drifting lower, right? As the pressure valve of everything, the FOMC, the Fed, everyone raising interest rates, it's sort of just drifting lower. About time oil started falling. Keep an eye on these levels. That last one was a really nice one. You can see how it even held onto that first level pretty much. Down through 102.50, we might see it back into around $90. Here's the equities, right? This is a good thing. You can see where the central bank announcements were. Right, and it's coming back to those levels. Now, is it going back above those or not? I don't think so, unless we get a change from the central banks. But what we can see, don't forget, we're coming into the last week of the month. There's like a bit of a, like a top here. It's not a great horizontal line. Whereas, you know what? If we were going to see a bit of a short squeeze on some of these things, then that's when it might happen. Let's just come back to that. No. Okay. So basically we might see a short squeeze next week if nothing's out, because there's no key data. You get that move where there's potential for it just to pop up a little bit. So the other ones, here it is here, the commodity index, right? Heading south. That's the commodity currencies, Canada, Australia, New Zealand should feel the pinch on that. We are seeing dollar CAD move to the top side. So dollar strength, CAD weakness. Aussie and Kiwi sort of drifting lower. Bitcoin, the cryptos just trading sideways as those equities have time to breathe again. So pretty much just trying to keep you in tune with what you should be thinking, your thought process as we go forward, right? So commodities, okay? So think about those things, because when you come back and start looking at, say, some of the data coming out, you can actually piece this together a bit more. Because we haven't got central bank stuff, but we've got intricate details here. Excuse me, sterling, right? We've got retail sales figures. These IFO numbers out of Germany are really well-respected, like sentiment numbers, conditions, current conditions, and business numbers, and all this sort of stuff. So, and I would put more weighting on the German stuff than the Eurozone numbers, right? So we got... So those two things. So even straight up from that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe Euro Sterling kicks into gear, right? The good thing is there's a gap between them. So Sterling might go, Sterling crosses, depending on what the setup is. Now, Sterling's drifting sideways. Maybe there's a cross that isn't. Have a look. If the trading opportunity doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, you're really clutching at straws going into it, right? It's got to stand out. Now, as I said, momentum has been diffused somewhat. So you really need some decent change here. The IFO numbers, obviously Euro crosses, and then you bring in the US numbers, right? The University of Michigan sentiment numbers, right? It's like the last stop saloon before the weekend. So maybe that gives sterling or euro something to think about. Or if we got strong numbers there, commodities are already going down. Maybe Aussie Kiwi lower, dollar CAD higher, right? They're the sort of the thought processes that you should be going through as you come into your trading day. Now, start of the Asian session, well, US equity futures down. Are we seeing any sort of uniform activity here? Well, don't forget, it hasn't been long going. Aussie and Kiwi up 4 or 7 pips and euro and sterling down a touch. So nothing much yet. And that tells me there's no major interest in the market at the moment. Otherwise, as the equities would have fallen, and they haven't fallen far, you would see that clear impact. So I would be looking at this going, well, the Asia session's pretty dead. There's no major Asian data coming out. So you know what? I might just take a rest and have a look during the European or come back at the start of the North American session, right? Next week, it's going to be like a bit drifty, as in like, you know, all the big stuff's out already. I'm just scrolling down through the data here, get some GDP final numbers, et cetera, et cetera. There's not a huge amount to come out next week, maybe UK GDP. I think the GDP numbers aren't really coming up as a major thing for me at the moment. It's more inflation and then secondary employment, but that's where we are. So anyway, there's some things drifting at the moment. Don't beat yourself up. As I said, unless you see a clear opportunity, you go, hang on a second, that looks really good. And we've got, say, a fundamental driver coming out. That's when you can piece it together. Outside of that, rest up. Make sure, conserve your energy, your trading energy, right? It's important to come back fresh and not come back with a small loss that you put on a trade because you thought it might be worth a few bucks. Forget that, right? You come back fresh. You've got your capital. You're looking for new opportunities. All right, guys, have a good one. Have a good weekend. If I don't speak to you, probably won't. All right, cheerio. Have a good one.